As South Carolina has evolved, so has its taxation system, undergoing periodic adjustments to adapt to changing economic conditions. This year is no different, as the SC Chamber highlighted tax modernization as a specific issue area in their 2024 competitiveness agenda. Joining us today with more on this is Thomas Rhodes, owner of Rhodes Companies. Thomas, thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Taylor.
So I want to jump into this by asking what specific aspects of our current tax system are in most need of modernization?
Yeah, well, I heard you say it's been around a long time. Actually, our tax code started in the 20s. It's almost 100 years.
Wow.
And we've been nibbling around the edges of modernizing that for the last 100 years. And so really focusing on the two main components that touch people a lot is income tax, which, by the way, is the highest in the Southeast as far as our marginal tax rate.
Okay, and now how do we compare to other states in the Southeast?
We're the highest, and that's not a category you necessarily want to be the highest in.
Yeah.
We have the highest marginal rate at 6.3%. And actually, what a lot of people don't realize is that to be a top income tax bracket earner in South Carolina, you have to have $17,330 in income.
Oh, that's it.
So if you make more than $17,330, congratulations, you are in the top income tax bracket in South Carolina.
Okay, and it's not like that in our neighboring states?
No, it's not. No, it's not. North Carolina has gone through a lot of tax modernization. Their ranking is number 9, so they're in the top 10 in the U.S. in their business tax climate. We're 29. Now, we have improved from 33, but we're still 29 in our tax climate.
So what are some of the things that our state does well when it comes to our tax climate?
We do well at recruiting industry, but oftentimes we are incentivizing them to come here by giving them exceptions to our general tax code. And so a lot of us are saying, hey, those are great for recruiting large industry, but let's talk about the small business owner who, by the way, are paying, most of the time, I talked to a friend today, he's paying his business income tax and his personal return, which most people do. That's what I do. I own a collection of businesses. Most of them are S corporations, and so the income that they make goes on my personal return that there again kicks in at $17,000 in income.
Wow, okay. And now what are some of the key objectives that policymakers are aiming to achieve through this tax modernization that we're seeing in the competitiveness agenda?
Yeah, we're really encouraging policymakers to look at it in a holistic way. Not just nibble at the edges of it, but really say, is this what's working today, but also for the next 20 years, for the next 30 years. You know, Charleston has a large draw. People want to live here. It's a beautiful place. It's a beautiful part of the world. The tax code is not. If the same person moves to Florida, their income tax rate is 0. Ours is 6.3.
Okay. And so what are some of these initiatives that they are trying to implement?
So at the State Chamber, we studied the tax from top to bottom a couple years ago. We put out a report. We were really encouraging policymakers to look at it and say, hey, we not only need to fix the income tax, but also the property tax. You know, that's another thing that a lot of folks don't realize is that 68% of all property taxes in South Carolina are paid for by business. Okay, and even if you don't own a business, that affects you because it's increasing their cost of business, which when you do business with that particular business, it's passed down to you as the consumer. And so it's a real drag on it. And another group that's really affected by property tax is renters. And what a lot of people don't realize is that a renter pays 3 times the amount of property tax as someone who owns their home in South Carolina because of the differential between owner-occupied real estate and non-owner-occupied real estate.
Has there been anything that our neighboring states have implemented that works that maybe we should take on as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, our 2 neighbors, since you asked that question, have a flat tax.
Okay.
And their flat tax is easy to understand, but it's also lower than our marginal rate, or excuse me, than our marginal rate at 6.3%. So looking at that and really simplifying it, if we went and interviewed people on the street and said, hey, can you explain the South Carolina tax code? They wouldn't be able to do it. And frankly, as someone who's been looking at it for years and operating within it, it's still confusing to me to a large degree.
And now, what do you anticipate that this year brings as far, I mean, do you see any big changes on the horizon?
I think we're going to look at potentially changing it in the years coming. As you're probably aware, we've had an accounting error at the state government that's over $1 billion. Frankly, we've had 2 of those in the last couple of years where they just forgot that they had $1.8 billion on the books of the state government. And I think what you'll see there is a lot of momentum from the general public through policymakers saying, hey, if we're mistaking $1.8 billion of our tax dollars that we've given the state government, maybe we need to look at how we're collecting state tax revenues as well and modernize it so that it fits not for the last 100 years, but for the next 100 years. The South Carolina Chamber of Commerce has a great report, and I would encourage them to learn about it because it's something that affects everyone.
Absolutely. Thomas, thank you for sharing that with us.
Thank you for having me.
We're back after this.